McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop, Season 4, Episode 2, Blood and Remorse. October 18th, 1921. Continued. I stood face to face with the statue of the angel with the bleeding eyes, and I reached out and touched her gingerly. She looked serene and hesitant. That eye, though. The tiny red beads glinted in the light of Scotland's lantern, and the glisten made them look like something foul from an operating table. Scotland and Rupert hurried up behind me. "You found it?" Scotland said. "Good. Let's go in." "I'm rethinking everything," Rupert said. "I don't think we should use this murder object. I don't think we should try to enter the night enthusiast's prison as just the three of us. I think we should bring about 60 of us with clubs and pistols." "You know we agreed to sneak, Rupert," Scotland said. "Did we?" Rupert said. "Did we ever agree to sneak? We just sort of left. What about the clubs and pistols?" "Our prison is guarded by one person," Scotland said. "With magic, there's very little need for more than one guard. Unless Ariana is tricking Maud, the three of us should be more than enough match for whatever is waiting down there." Rupert huffed. "If you say so." "I do," Scotland said. "I also say time is of the essence. Let's go." I think Scotland knew that if we waited to discuss it, Rupert might hem and haw in terror forever. Additionally, the longer we waited outside this statue, the greater the odds of a night enthusiast catching us hanging around. Scotland touched the statue, and with a zap, teleported into the murder object. "You next," I said to Rupert. "Maud," Rupert said. "Are you really Maud? Or are you Ariana pretending to be Maud, and you're going to shuffle all of us one by one into a lava-filled pit? Are you just changing your face to look like Maud?" "Now that is a disturbing thought," I said. "But it is really me. Ariana wouldn't know that you sometimes sing 'When My Baby Smiles at Me' in the shower." "Oh, God," Rupert said, overcome with embarrassment. "That's the spirit," I said. "Now in you pop." Rupert tapped the statue and immediately teleported inside. I followed him a second later. Rupert had put the image of lava pits into my mind, so I felt ill at ease to arrive and find we were in some kind of jungle. Well, sort of. We were inside a building, a warehouse of some kind by the look of the brick walls and the high honeycomb windows, but the air steamed with moisture, and birds shrieked, and huge vines hung from the ceiling like snakes. The vines were hundreds of feet long, coiling and thick, and they tangled around each other like a web. Scotland and Rupert stood next to me, also looking around. There was no sign of a night enthusiast guard anywhere. To our left was a solid brick wall, no doors or windows, so the only way forward was into the vines. "No guard," Rupert said. "That's good." "Yes and no," I said. I stepped closer to one of the vines. "What do you mean?" Rupert said. "Well," I said, with a sigh, "it might mean that something else is guarding this place." I tapped one of the vines with my finger. Instantly, 6 or 7 mouths flamed to life, like a hibiscus blossom, and snapped for my flesh. I stepped back. "Did you get bitten?" Rupert hissed. He stared at the vines like he was going to be sick. "No," I said, "but I'm pretty sure they got me just by spitting at me." "Let me look," Scotland said. "I was mostly being dramatic," I said. I held up my arm for her to see. "And that's fine," Scotland said, "but the mouths may cast a light mist of poison every time they open." Scotland squinted at my forearm. "You're not breaking out into a rash yet. Let me know if you start feeling sick." "I will," I said, dazedly. Of all the threats I was expecting to face, man-eating plants had not been one of them. "What if this isn't the prison?" Rupert said. "What if this is just an execution chamber?" "Lovely thought," Scotland said. She looked around and sniffed. "I see pipes, though. See? There in the wall. If I'm not mistaken, I also smell coal burning. Both those things, to me, suggest that someone lives here permanently, and it's not just a stomping ground for plants and carcasses. Don't say the word carcass right now, if you don't mind, Rupert said. Corpse, then, Scotland said. Rupert shot her a dirty look. No, I think this is the prison. I think the vines keep unwanted visitors out. They're being foolish if they think they can keep magic unusuals out, however, Scotland said briskly. Maud, get on my shoulders, would you? We're going to identify the next clean spot of ground. Rupert helped give me a boost onto Scotland's shoulders, where I sat and perched my hand to my forehead like a sea captain of old. I did my best to see through the vines to see if there was an open patch of ground somewhere ahead, and there appeared to be a tunnel at the far end of the warehouse. Rupert, I said, do you want to climb up next? I think I see a tunnel, but I want a second opinion. I am not a gymnasium, Scotland said. Yes, but we all have to see it, or we won't be able to teleport into it, I said. We could use an eye symbol. I'd rather save the jelly. Scotland, you and I can stand side by side, and Rupert can balance for a moment, pushing up on our shoulders. We did, and Rupert hopped back down after a few seconds. It is a tunnel, he said. Looks dark and murky. Now, let me take a look, Scotland said. Do you want a boost? Rupert said. No, that's all right, Scotland said. She set down her medical bag and the lantern, backed up, and took a flying jump at the wall. She hit the wall squarely with both feet, about halfway up, and somehow, before she fell, she pushed herself back upright. She now had a higher advantage than either Rupert or I had. A second later, she crashed back down and landed on both feet, but with a wobble. Ow, she said. Are you hurt? Rupert said. Scotland lifted her left foot. The heel had broken off the bottom of her shoe. Only my shoes and my dignity, Scotland said. No, it's all right. I'll go barefoot. High heels. Damnedest, most useless thing ever invented. Scotland angrily tossed her shoes into her medical bag, then snapped it shut. She stood there in her stockinged feet and looked a little less austere and more like a duck. Shall we? With 3 consecutive pops, we teleported from one side of the vines to the other, into the dark tunnel. As soon as we arrived, I got a bad feeling, because there was a bad smell. It smelled like metal and harsh soap and bloody meat that's been sitting out in the sun too long. Scotland lifted the lantern and peered into the depths. The tunnel went downwards at a slant. As we passed into the darkness, I began to notice circular rooms on either side of the passage. They were sealed with barred doors, and all of them were empty, but I nudged Rupert. Do you think these are cells? I muttered to him, as Scotland walked in front. Do you think Mr. McGillicuddy and Wrath could be in one of the cells up ahead? Let's hope so, Rupert said, but something tells me it is not going to be that easy. The further down the tunnel we got, the more nervous I became. I'm not usually claustrophobic, diary, but something about the weight of the earth above us and the heavy damp of the bricks behind us and all around us, it made me squeamish. I nearly jumped out of my skin when, a few paces ahead, we heard a moan. Scotland stopped in her tracks. Who's there? She hissed. The person moaned again. Are we going to help them? Rupert said. It could be a trap, Scotland said. Well, let's shed a little light on them and find out, shall we? Gingerly, I slipped the lantern from between Scotland's fingers and stepped forward. The beam of light swung and illuminated a man hunched over in a cell. He didn't look good. His coat was filled with burn holes, and his hands, which clutched his dark hair, were covered in blood. Not the smooth slime of someone else's blood, either. His skin was ragged with small cuts, some fresh and some old, and tones of yellow and brown from healing skin, mixed with the bright red in his hands. His torso was slashed with thick lines of red as well, lines that I didn't understand, until I realized his coat was striped, black and red horizontal stripes. It was Wrath. One down, one to go. Wrath, I said. I stepped up to the bars of his cell. Wrath winced, like there was a fly buzzing around his ear, and then he twitched again. He looked up in confusion. When he saw me standing there, his mouth dropped open. Are you injured? I said. Badly, I mean. Maud, Wrath said. He stared at me very seriously. You're the devil, aren't you? You're the actual devil. No matter where I go, no matter where I find myself, just when I think I'm past human hope, you appear suddenly, like you're haphazardly looking around for a picnic. No picnics here, I'm afraid. I drew the symbol of an eye in magic jelly on the wall. You can't teleport into this cell, you know, Wrath said. No, but I can walk in, I said. I touched the eye and reappeared on the other side of the bars. Scotland and Rupert followed suit. Ooh, Wrath said. Where is Mr. McGillicuddy, Wrath? Rupert asked. He's down in the prison. Through the trap door, Wrath said. He isn't in the tunnel. Scotland stepped forward, and the light of the lantern swung, bright, into Wrath's vision. Wrath covered his eyes and fussed. Ow! Scotland stooped and immediately glanced at Wrath's wrist. That looks bad, she said. How long is the cut? Which cut? The cut on your arm. I have a cut on my arm? Wrath, please take off your coat. Wrath sat there staring for so long, Scotland grabbed his sleeve and ripped it up to the elbow. I winced. His arm was hideous. Blood and yellow bruises wrapped around thick, black burn marks. They tried to burn me, but, Wrath chuckled, I was half wood and it just, scorched. I realized he was right, and the wound wasn't as bad as it looked. The black patches were where the wood in his forearm had blackened. Someone had tattooed his flesh with a hot iron. Scotland snapped open her medical bag and immediately began to dab things onto Wrath, touch him, pull up his pants leg or his sleeve to check for wounds, poke into his mouth. Stop touching me like that, Wrath snapped. It isn't decent. Doctor, Scotland said, as if the single word explained everything. Look here, Wrath said. You can't go around touching me willy-nilly. I have a wife. No, you haven't, Scotland said, briskly wiping some of the blood off Wrath's face to check the cut underneath. Yes, I have, Wrath said, piqued. Her name is Mara. Scotland nodded, like this was a made-up fact, muttered by a delusional Wrath, but my stomach wobbled. Well, tell Mara I had to prod you like a prize pig until I found out what shape you're in. If you're bleeding from too many holes, I'm going to have to send you home with Rupert at once, instead of keeping you around while we search for Mr. McGillicuddy. I'm not too bad, Wrath said. Wood doesn't bleed too much. For the first time, Scotland softened ever so slightly. Did you give them any information, Wrath? She said. When they tortured you, did you tell them anything? Oh, I told them lots, Wrath said. He grinned up at me, and for a second my stomach went sick. Scotland's gaze flew to mine. Wrath continued. I told them that Mr. McGillicuddy was a circus performer in a past life, who went by the name of Sneaky Tim, and when he wasn't juggling, he would sneak behind all the members of the audience and clip their hair off with a pair of shears. But, Rupert stammered, that isn't true, Wrath. Well, obviously, Wrath said, but I went into great detail about how he gave men bald patches on the back of their heads. I also told them that the ones who belong to the pawn shop are currently flying around the Ukraine in the 1680s in a giant air balloon that's being mistaken for the second coming of Attila the Hun. What? I said. And I told them that you, Maud, Wrath said, aren't really human at all, that you're an ancient tree spirit dressed up in a skirt, and that you have a bad habit of showing up at parties and honking at everyone if they speak ill of womankind. It sounded like a great pastime, to be honest. But Wrath, I spluttered, they didn't believe any of that, did they? Of course not, Wrath said. Did you tell them anything real? Scotland said. Anything at all that they can use against us? Wrath suddenly looked the most sane he'd ever looked. He arched his eyebrow at Scotland. Madam, what the hell do you think I was doing up here? And why the hell do you think I look like this? If I told them anything they actually wanted to hear. Scotland nodded. All right. Is Mr. McGillicuddy in the same shape as you? I could tell what she was thinking. If an old man had sustained injuries like this. He was likely not going to make it. No, they haven't taken him up to be tortured yet, Rath said. They're not feeding him, and he isn't well, but I kept promising the juiciest of secrets, which, to be fair, I gave them, especially the one about me and Don Mamungus's love child that is paper thin and likes to haunt people's ovens. Rath, I said, you said Mr. McGillicuddy is downstairs, through a trapdoor? Yes, Rath said, but he's being guarded by 3 guards, and the trapdoor is in the middle of the vines. You'll have to clear a path to get there. I blanched. But how? Rath shook his head. Oh, just take a little of my blood on a hanky. The vines hate blood. They move away from it. Someone should stay with Rath, Scotland said. She and Rupert both looked at me wistfully, like neither of them quite had the courage to chat with a madman. I'll stay, of course, I said. Just clear the vines and hurry back. Scotland and Rupert used some of the magic jelly to exit straight to the mouth of the tunnel. As soon as Rath and I were left alone, he sighed and began to vent. Oh, Maud, Rath said. Apparently he was in the mood to wax philosophical. Maud, I've come so far. I've done so little. I let you bully me into being nice again. I once killed 3 men with gas from the Great War. It was ingenious. It was heinous. I was on my way to bloodshed revenge, and then you had to summon those Whiskelet things and put a stop to it. You could have joined the Whiskelets, Rath, I said. You know they were hoping you would. They were very impressed with your murders. They didn't want you to be nice. Not at all. Yes, but you see... Rath tapped the end of my nose sadly, like he was drunk. They wanted me to murder everyone. I only wanted to murder the night enthusiasts. I'm a very particular kind of murderer, Maud. There has to be a point. I wanted to kill 1 person for every day of life I should have had. And I wanted to kill the people responsible for the train car. Because otherwise, why would it feel good? The Whiskelets wanted you to murder everyone, I ventured. Rath, if he knew it, had never revealed the Whiskelets' deeper purpose to me. Well, the mice, Rath said. The mice? Yes, the mice, you know. Death to all mice. That's their catchphrase. That's how you summon them. Who are the mice? I said. Anyone you can hate, Rath said. Anyone you can despise until they're less than human in your eyes. That's the point. Everyone is a mouse to someone. The Whiskelets just like to stir the fires until a bomb goes off in someone else's face. I was sickened and confused, but at that moment, Rupert arrived again. I think we've done it, he said. The vines really do hate blood. Yes, well, they're remorse vines, Rath said. They're the product of breeding vines with actual human remorse. They think they want to bite you, but once they do, they feel terrible about it and recoil. Blood makes them positively sick. Rupert just stared at Rath like he didn't know what to say. Then he turned to me. Let's go, he said. If there really are 3 guards waiting for us under the trapdoor, then we need all the help we can get. We hope you've enjoyed Season 4, Episode 2, Blood and Remorse, of McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop. McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop is written and performed by Minerva Sweetie Wren. All rights reserved. Please subscribe, share it with your friends, and visit minervasweeneywren.com for more. The most impactful way to support McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop is to simply follow Minerva Sweetie Wren at Meg Macaulay Inc. on Instagram and Twitter. Please consider giving $1 a month at patreon.com/SweeneyWren to unlock the upcoming mystery, The Dark and Decrepit Planet of Spin. All links are in the description of this episode. McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop will continue in 2 weeks with Season 4, Episode 3, God and the Devil in Love.